너 주려고 이게 워낙 무거운 거라.
아 그래?
At the beginning of Parasite, Min shows up with the Scholar's Stone. Ki-woo is immediately attracted to the stone. He stares at it intently. The next cut is a break in continuity, a jump in time. The stone has already been lifted out of the box and Ki-woo is looking in a totally different direction. But this jump is barely noticeable. The dialogue from this shot starts under the previous shot, making the jump in time almost imperceptible.
이게 산수경석인가?
The transition from a closer shot to a wide shot also keeps this from being a jump cut. But the subtle passing of time isn't accidental. We enter into Ki-woo's subjective perspective in this moment. We're experiencing his attraction to the rock, and it's almost as if he and we, the audience, lose track of time and snap back to reality a moment later, realizing time has passed. There are many examples of this kind of subtle and precise editing in Parasite that we could examine, but Parasite provides us with a great opportunity not just to examine and break down some examples of effective editing, but to ask ourselves what editing is and who really does editing in a film. This video is sponsored by Mubi. Check out their curated collection of streaming cinema at mubi.com/thomasflight. Most likely, the majority of films and TV shows you watch are shot with a process called coverage. When shooting a scene, a director and cinematographer will usually shoot the scene from a variety of angles. They'll shoot some wide shots, close-ups, medium shots, and over-the-shoulder shots. Then it will be the job of the editor to stitch together the scene from all these takes. The director hopefully has an idea going into the scene of how it will progress visually, but with coverage, you have an option in the edit of changing the visual structure of the scene. We know from interviews with Joon-Ho that he did not shoot coverage for Parasite, except where it was absolutely necessary. This means for a scene like this, where the entire scene plays out from a single angle, this was probably the only angle they shot this scene from. They didn't shoot any other angles just in case they wanted to change how the scene progressed in the edit. So in this case, instead of creating the visual progression of the scene, the editor's job is just to choose the best take and time the transition into and out of the shot. For Bong Joon-ho, one of the reasons he can avoid shooting coverage is that he's often incorporating or planning how the film will be edited together in the script and in his storyboards. Let's look at this scene. As the conversation shifts to the idea of conning the parks, the visual composition of the scene changes.
야, 믿어주니 고마운데 그럼 나보고 대학생인 척하라는 거야? 기우야.
And we have this shot.
한번 따져보자. 네가 군대 가기 전에 2번, 군대 제대하고 2번, 도합 4번의 수능을 봤잖아?
It's a transition from here to here, and from using this angle of Min to this angle of Min was planned for this moment in Bong Joon-ho's storyboards. And cinematographer Kyung-po Hong just shot the scene the way it was storyboarded, and editor Jin-Mo Yang just followed Bong's storyboards and stitched the two shots together. Do we attribute the effectiveness of the end result to editing, cinematography, or directing? Ultimately, no matter which person made the creative decision, or if it was made in pre-production, post-production, or production, we can attribute the effectiveness of the transition to editing. When we use the word editing, we're often incorporating two things into that definition. First, we're referring to the activities of the actual editor and the creative decisions they make, but we're also referring to the concept of an edit. In film language, this is sometimes called montage. I'm not talking about montage sequences like the one you see later in Parasite. A montage sequence uses a faster series of shots that usually condenses time, space, and information. When I say montage here, I'm referring specifically to the creation of meaning through the visual juxtaposition of two shots. By itself, this is just a shot of a stone, and by itself, this is just a shot of Ki-woo. But edited together, they create a moment where Ki-woo looks at a stone. That's montage. And montage is the fundamental building block used by editors to create meaning. But montage and editing can happen long before a film is even shot. Towards the end of Parasite, there is a lot of intercutting between different locations and characters. A lot of action is happening all at once, but this is carefully managed in a way that is seamless. We can attribute this seamlessness and pacing to editing, but it isn't just the editor who's responsible for how these scenes flow together and are intercut. For example, here the cut from the kitchen to the basement is aided by Chung-suk's glance towards the stairs. The performance and the edit have to work together to create that smooth transition. It's the work of the editor to time the cut with the look, but for the editor to do that, the look has to exist in the performance, and in this case, it originates in the script. But I'm not trying to diminish the work of Parasite's editor Joon-Ho Yang or give all the credit to Joon-Ho. By making strong and effective, creative editing decisions early on, director Bong is simply giving his editor more time and space to work on everything else. Some scenes are still shot with coverage, and it's up to Joon-Ho Yang to work out the timing of the cuts in those scenes. In this scene, it appears coverage was shot. It looks like the entire scene was probably filmed from these 4 angles.
집안 구석구석 관리도 잘하고 그리고 매사에 손을 딱 잘 지켜. 내가 원래 손을 넘는 사람을 제일 싫어하는.
Here, the editor cuts to this shot, crossing the line of action instead of cutting back to this angle, which stays on the line of action. This choice emphasizes the idea that Mr. Kim is someone who will cross the line. The material to be able to make this choice, crossing the line and creating meaning through montage, had to be provided by the cinematographer, and it was probably planned for by Bong. But if coverage was shot, the editor still needs to decide when is the right moment in that scene to cut to that new angle.
아니 이 양반이 왜?
이거 그 아줌마 맞지? 뭐야 왜 온 거야?
In this scene, we see the housekeeper inside over video and also on the outside in the rain. An important decision for the scene is when to show her on the outside. In the film, we don't see her outside until right before Mrs. Kim takes some pity on her and lets her in.
부엌 지하실에 제 물건을 깜빡 놔두고 온 게 있어가지고요.
제가 이제 관둘 때 워낙 급하게 쫓겨났거든요. 경황도 없이.
The shot mirrors some shots of the Kims from earlier, and so I think it makes sense to show her outside for the first time when Mrs. Kim relates to her and has sympathy on her. But this shot could have come at the beginning of the scene or in the middle, and it's up to the editor to make that decision. But even with the constraints of no coverage shooting, there's still a lot an editor can do. As VFX become cheaper, better, and more accessible, they're increasingly used by editors in subtle ways to improve timing and performance. For lockdown shots, in a moment like this, it's easy to composite 2 shots together to perfect the timing of actions. Here's another example. If I wanted in the shot for the housekeeper and the dog to come in a little earlier, that would be a very easy adjustment to make. But it goes deeper than that. In an interview with The Art of the Cut, Joon-Ho Yang revealed that shot stitching is used in the film even during pans on longer unbroken takes. In the same way the editor of 1917 can combine multiple takes to create the illusion of one longer take, editors like Joon-Ho Yang can use the same techniques to combine multiple takes to perfect timing or combine 2 different performances. And if they're not spending most of their time constructing scenes from coverage, the editor will have more time to spend perfecting every little detail. The role of editing is massive and far-reaching in film, but the building blocks of good editing often start with the script and cinematography. A great editor will be able to create magic from scenes shot with coverage. Coverage itself isn't bad, but often when a director like Bong Joon-ho is planning the cinematography, performance, and editing, and how they'll work together from the beginning of the process, it can lead to a quality of work difficult to achieve otherwise. In the same way, the editor of a film is often referred to as the last screenwriter. The screenwriter is, in a sense, the first editor. Even if they're never communicating directly, in reality, the editor is working in collaboration on the edit with many other members of the film crew. Understanding editing will make you a better screenwriter or cinematographer, and understanding screenwriting and cinematography will make you a better editor. This video is sponsored by Mubi. Parasite was a film that I think made a lot of people realize that the world of international film has a lot to offer. If you want to have more access and find interesting indie films, art house films, or international cinema, check out Mubi. Mubi has 30 films at a time and they add a new one every day. It's a great place to find new stuff, and you can try it for free for 30 days when you go to mubi.com/ThomasFlight. That's mubi.com/ThomasFlight. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to see some additional commentary on Parasite that just didn't fit into one of these essays, you can watch this month's bonus video on my Patreon by becoming a patron for $5 a month at patreon.com/ThomasFlight.